Action! Welcome to Torn Stubs with me, photographer Robert Gershenson, and
Joshua Winning, the greatest film critic you've never heard of.
And we're going to the movies. We are continuing our deep dive into 21st century horror with Martyrs, directed by Pascal Laurier. Did I pronounce that correctly? I don't know. Once again, we're joined by writer Matt Glasby, whose book, The Book of Horror, The Anatomy of Fear in Film, is available now, and it sees Matt dissect the scariest horror films of the past 60 years. It's available in all good bookstores, as well as the haunted ones. We are going to discuss Martyrs. I'd never seen Martyrs before, and fucking hell.
I did wonder when you suggested us that we watch this if you had actually seen it.
I'd never seen it, and it's traumatic.
It really
Joshua,
is.
had you seen it?
I had, and I really, really didn't want to have to watch it again. I think I blocked most of it out of my memory because I remember it just being completely horrific and, as you said, traumatizing. So I was intrigued to watch it again to see if it was as disturbing as I remembered it, but also I really, really didn't want to. I watched it last night I delayed it as long as I could, basically, until I actually just had to sit down and watch it.
Matt, you included it in your book, so it's clearly made a connection with you.
Yes, it's one of those films that people always say you'll only watch once because it's so traumatic, but I saw it once as a horror fan, and then I saw it twice to write about it because it's a chapter in my book, and I swore never again. And then I agreed to come on this lovely podcast, and you guys said, "Oh, it's Martyrs." So I've now seen it 4 times in the past 3 or 4 years.
You've seen it more than anybody in the world.
I've seen it more than Pascal Laurier, but
yeah.
I would say I do think it's a masterpiece. I will also say I am unlikely to watch it again in the next decade or so because 4 times is enough, and it's hard going.
But did it scare you?
Yes, I think the film is a film of 2 halves, and I think the first section, in which our 2 heroines are being pursued by a kind of banshee creature, is genuinely terrifying. And the second section, which is much more sort of about torture and the sort of what humans are capable of, it's not scary, is grinding and horrible in a different way. But that first 45 minutes is really scary, I think.
Joshua, just give us a quick synopsis.
Oh, thanks, Rob. The film begins in the 70s when a young girl called Lucy has escaped from a rundown, horrible warehouse where she seems to have been a victim of quite terrible abuse. Obviously all abuse is terrible, but she's seriously scarred and obviously very traumatized. And when she's taken off to sort of like a kid's home, I think she ends up in.
She goes to an orphanage, doesn't she?
Yeah, she befriends a girl called Anna, and they become very close. And then we flash forward, 7-8 years or something? 13 years?
I think it's 15.
It's quite a while. She basically grows up to be a young woman.
Yeah. So it must be in the early 90s this film is set.
Yeah, I guess so. But when we meet her again, basically, she storms into this idyllic family home and kills everyone, the parents and the 2 kids. One of the kids is played by Xavier Dolan.
I know. Welcome back to the podcast. Xavier Dolan.
As briefly as you're here. And the film sort of from there just spirals into the depths of hell. Basically, it's you spend the good first half of the film really not knowing what the hell is going on, and that is in itself sort of morbidly gripping because the heroine Lucy, she's supposed to be, you're conditioned to sort of feel sorry for her. She's obviously been a victim of abuse. She's grown up, and in most horror films, when those kids grow up, they kind of become the heroes. But in this, she re-enters the film, blows people away, screams and shouts about how they were her tormentors, and you don't really know how you feel about her. You feel so conflicted about this woman, and that just adds to this overall unnerving sense of having no idea what the fuck is going on.
I couldn't tell where it was going. I just couldn't guess. And I guess that comes down to just brilliant storytelling, where it's not, I mean, it's not at all obvious and what's going on, but not in a confusing way. You know, this isn't like a David Lynch, right? This is a reasonably simple, straightforward film. You just don't realize how straightforward it is until the end.
Yeah.
But in the moment, I couldn't tell what was going on.
I think part of that is because the writer Pascal Lagier, he very cleverly mixes things, like, you know, Lucy's being tormented by this horribly scarred, disfigured woman who, you know, she is terrifying. She's like a banshee. She's like screaming and making guttural noises and attacking her and savagely attacking her.
It's very J-horror.
Yeah, she's got a real J-horror vibe about her. But then when you later on, spoiler, find out she's actually almost like a manifestation. She's not real, but she's like, she's Lucy's trauma manifest. That's a really clever trick that you almost haven't really noticed as being playing in the background. Because you've been worrying about Lucy being completely delusional, but you haven't necessarily assumed that this thing chasing her isn't real. So it's very clever.
Well, it's a horror trope, isn't it? So you don't think to question that this thing isn't anything other than a real ghost coming after her. There's nothing up until that point that you think, well, nothing ordinary has happened, so why would this be out of the ordinary?
One of the things I think it does is that people who are incredibly traumatized are reliving, you know, PTSD and the like, are reliving those traumas constantly. And so for the first half of the film, where we're in with Lucy, we're at her side, if not in her head, there is no there's no sober viewpoint of what's going on. She's being attacked by this banshee creature. She's massacring her family. She's cutting herself and scratching herself and banging her head against the wall. Like, everything is this horrible, violent now, because that's how she feels inside because of what's been done to her. So I think it just is it's an incredibly powerful, like, dramatization of what trauma might feel like. And you just don't know which way's up when you're from her point of view. Then actually the film's very, very clever because something else is happening, as you guys have said, and it takes a complete left turn halfway through, which is a really great piece of writing. In fact, it constantly does reversals. Like when we first see the family, the daughter's screaming and we're like, oh, something awful's happening to her. But she's having a play fight with her brother. Nothing awful's happening. And there's constant things like that where you know, oh, this is what's happening. This is something terrible. And it's not. Or something seems innocent and it's not, obviously, either.
Yeah.
And then they have their nice family breakfast and it's just general, almost like setting up the early part of a Friday the 13th or a Halloween movie, chit chat, Americana, even though it's set in
teasing and
French
tensions.
Canada, and then opens the door and boom, literally boom. Do you think the kids knew what the parents were doing?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Because there's a moment when she says to Xavier, she said, "Do you know what your parents did?" And he hesitates, and there's this slight shrug that he plays incredibly well because it could be read either way. But
also, if those kids are no older than 18. They're old teenagers, but they are at home. So even if they have grown up knowing that their mother and dad have got a basement torture parlor for it, so like that's not their fault. So he gets to be strangely ambivalent about that. Like that's you're right. It's really well played. That could be either way, but like it's not his fault that happened.
Do you think that he does know, and because he's grown up in that environment, he doesn't see anything wrong with that?
Don't make me watch this film again. I do not want to watch this film again and try and answer that question. I'm saying no, he doesn't know. End of.
You're saying he doesn't know.
I'm saying he doesn't. But it is a bit weird.
Well, I think maybe he does know, but it's so normal for him.
Yeah. Maybe
in that moment he's thinking, oh, maybe it's not correct, and that's why he hesitates, because maybe the hesitation is, well, yeah, I know what they do, but why are you angry about it, girl with gun? Remember,
Girl with Gun would have been kidnapped pretty much before he was born. And escapes, in fact, pretty much before he's born, because she's in her
definitely.
20s then, isn't she? It looks like, and he's sort of maybe 17 or something. So yeah, even if he does know, like this goes, the history of this abuse goes back so far, it predates a young adult, effectively.
Yeah.
There's no in the house. There's no like religious imagery that I could tell. So like if he was justifying it to himself, he would maybe justify it by saying, this is being done for, us in order for us to like see God or whatever. But there's none of that around the house. So,
but there's none of that in the story, is there? They're not looking for God, are they?
Because it feels like it's a religious cult, but it's not a religious cult. It's like a nihilist cult, or just a sort of exploratory cult, just trying to find like the next level of human existence, I guess.
One thing that I find about this film, it's slightly subversive in that the girl that comes with the first girl, Anna, she survives, so she can be considered the final girl, and yet she doesn't go up the stairs to escape. She finds herself going downstairs into the basement, which is completely flipping the horror trope on its head. But my question is, if you realise you've survived a horror, why go into a basement? Why not go outside, down the road, to the train station, and get the hell out of there?
So you think she should have fled the scene? I think,
wouldn't you?
Yeah, hell yeah.
You wouldn't
Absolutely.
go, oh,
absolutely.
a very sterile looking room with some keys and a coat, and then there's a almost hole in the floor that's locked. I should go down there because that's the safest thing to do.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
She spends the night there, doesn't she? It's one of the things that's quite good about it. Like, she falls asleep and it's the next day or something. Like, it's not movie-ish. It's kind of rubbish. They've committed this big long crime and then like have a bit of a sleep and then get on with things. Like, I quite like that.
But she needs to know. She found out after her best friend / potential lover, we don't really know, she finds out that she was telling the truth, and she's been really seesawing between terrified that her friend has lost her mind and is this actually real, and if so, what the hell has really happened to her. So now that she can't ask Lucy what happened and believe her, she has to see it for herself. So that's why she goes down.
But that's a pretty brave and ballsy and what turns out to be disastrous decision to make, to go, well, I've just seen all this fucked up shit, so why don't I go downstairs? Surely the fact that she's seen all the fucked up shit, is that not proof enough? Why does she need to go downstairs? Yeah,
and it's also devastating when we as an audience realise, oh yeah, she's not a final girl, she's not coming back from this. Like, as soon as they have her and they start torturing her, and I think it's when they remove her skin that you're like, oh fuck, like she actually isn't the final girl character. She is another victim in this, and she's not coming back from this, and that's like a devastating moment. You could say she is the final girl in a sense, because at the end, Mademoiselle Exposition kills herself. What, Mama
They all carry on.
Mama Petrelli or whatever her name is.
She's just like, let me come in. I've just read the script. Let me tell you everything that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? So, but she kills herself at the end, and you have this ambiguous ending that could be read either way. But do the other people in the crazy group carry on looking for the answers, or do they go, well, the old bird's dead. That's
What do you guys think? What do you guys think?
Call this a day.
What do you think's happened at the end?
Josh?
I loved what you, Matt, wrote in your book about it, because actually I hadn't thought of that angle at all. But I just assumed that she, when Anna turns out to be the final girl who actually does attain this heightened state of being, and she tells Mademoiselle, oh my god, why can't I say her name?
Mademoiselle Exposition.
Mademoiselle Exposition. She tells her what she saw, or I just assume she told the truth, and then Mademoiselle goes upstairs and blows her brains out, and I just kind of thought, oh, okay, well, she's been given some kind of verbal proof of life beyond death, so she's just decided to kill herself. But Matt, that's not what you wrote in your book. That was my reading. You wrote something more interesting, I think.
But so you say that there's proof that there's life after death, but it could be exactly the opposite, couldn't it? Couldn't she be saying there's proof that there's nothing after death? We have no idea. Obviously, Anna's character has reached this transcendence that they're looking for, but we don't know what that means. And she whispers something, doesn't she? But we don't know. We never find out.
And actually, her face doesn't, like, when Mademoiselle hears what she has to say, her face doesn't look happy or excited. It actually looks sort of hopeless.
It's one of those things. He said, so Pascal said that he wrote this in like the darkest depression, and it's like all the nihilism he could ever summon. So, and it's got this incredibly profound seeming ending about the meaning of life, but it could actually be that the guy writing it is like, I'm not going to fucking tell you, and I'm not going to, there's not a proper answer, I'm not going to give you this. So it could actually just be like a fuck you to the audience as well, which I'd never thought of. It's like, we've been through all this stuff and there still isn't a resolution. Like, that's a nasty thing, and obviously it's a nasty film. Maybe that's like the ultimate last laugh, is that they're not even going to give you a twist or a resolution.
Yeah. And also he kind of makes you want to know what Anna has said. You know, he makes you almost complicit in what has been done to her, because you're like, oh fuck, it's worked and she's actually glimpsed something, and oh, now I quite want to know what she glimpsed, and you completely become part of that cult as soon as you start to think that, I think.
I like to think that Anna tricked Mademoiselle. I like to think that regardless what Anna saw, she has the wherewithal to know that what, you know, and Mademoiselle has already told her, we are looking for X, Y, and Z. So I think Anna's tricked her. I think Anna's told her a lie, regardless what she has seen, knowing full well that maybe it's a way out. Maybe they'll go, well, there's nothing there, let's let this poor girl go, even though they've taken all her skin off. Yeah,
imagine trying to go after that, like just walking down the street, it'd be so stingy, wouldn't it? It'd be like just the air, and like, it'd be like, yeah, I don't think she's going anywhere. I mean, maybe it could be anything. She could have said like, tell her who won X Factor, or like, just
I think that Mademoiselle comes in at the perfect moment, because actually she comes in an hour in, she comes in 40 minutes from the end. And she basically turns up right when it's become so, it's teetering on the edge of absurd. It's so awful. It's so rank and sort of hideous that, well, my boyfriend left the room at that point. He, you know, an hour in, he was done. He left. And I think that the film really gets so close to actually being completely unwatchable, because you start to sense that it's exploitation for exploitation's sake. It, you know, as soon as
this was going to be my next question. How does this film differ from the torture Gorno films like Hostel and Saw and Wolf Creek?
So firstly, I think Wolf Creek is a different kettle of fish to Hostel and Saw, because it's just so much better. How this differs from torture porn, and Pascal Laugier has been very clear about this, as he says, this isn't about torture, it's about suffering. And then the whole film is about what suffering does to poor Anna, how it warps us. And so, yeah, I'd say that this film has a philosophy, like it's trying to dig into the meaning behind all this stuff. Whereas those, like something like Saw, is genuinely just trying to, and Saw is a good version of this, but let's say something like Captivity or something really awful, is just trying to show you what people look like when they're in pain. Whereas this has got like way more going on than this. And so yeah, like it sort of uses the tropes of torture porn, and there's a lot of torture in it, and it's very difficult to watch. But yeah, it is trying to tell us something. I'm not entirely sure what that is, but yeah, I'm not bored of asking those questions after 4 views. But like I say, I'm not going to watch it again. So,
but do you feel that at all this film is exploitative?
The one question, so there's looking at new French extremism, and they say how it like tackles like colonialism, tackles like racial uncomfortableness of French past. So both women are from like have got a mixed race heritage. So I think let's look what's Moyana's is Moroccan, half Moroccan, and Mylene is half Chinese, and so they've been cast for. They're great actresses. But they seem to have been cast for a reason. They've got a certain look, and actually, there's the same in Inside and Frontier, and lots of films seem to cast women whose part of their heritage is overseas in some sort of weird attempt to grapple with like French guilt, fascism, racial politics. I don't know what that is, and I'm not detracting from their casting because they are amazing in this, but it does seem like he's got a plan, and a bit of that plan is watching beautiful women being hurt
by white captors.
That's quite uncomfortable.
I can't remember the girl that Anna finds down there with the staples in her head.
Yeah.
Was she mixed race?
I don't know, but she's
I can't tell.
So it's hard to tell, but there's definitely something. It's like the 2.4 children, white middle class family upstairs, everything's fine, and downstairs in the horrible basement we torture people whose heritage is from elsewhere.
Of the 4 people we've seen being tortured, the sort of the J horror girl back at the old place, then the main girl, then Anna, and then the potential 4th one. You know, so 2/3 of them are mixed race.
There is a point about that, and they also the Mademoiselle shows that like there's the victims through history that have achieved transcendence, and this like people in the Second World War, concentration camp victims, people. It says she mentions Alabama in 1960, which I guess is like civil rights thing. So there's definitely something about like huge times of political turmoil and the awful things that happen during them. I don't know exactly what it is again. So I'm sort of wary of putting my foot in my mouth.
Do you think the director included that to be a positive sort of reappraisal of French history in terms of their relationship with people who aren't white? Do you think it's potentially got a bit muddled and it can be read as a desire to do what he might potentially be writing against? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. It's a really murky question.
He's not celebrating it because he's not inviting anyone to take joy in what he's portraying. Like, it's not something. I don't think.
Mm.
We see a lot of torture, especially for Anna in that last 40 minutes.
And then why are the women beautiful? I know they're actresses tend to be beautiful. What is that? They could just be very ordinary looking people. So he's cast that for a reason. As with the horror thing, there's always the people doing awful things to beautiful women, and where is the question? Where is the desire for that? Does that come from the audience or from the director? Like, it's one of those things you've got to always ask questions about. I think this film is on the side of the good guys, but it's murky, and these are dark and difficult themes to be wielding a hammer at.
But it's also just like it's impossible to just dismiss it as pure exploitation. There were moments where I was just really angry at the film, like physically angry at it, and like just not okay with what I was being shown. But because you then get this reveal that there is an intellect at work, the reason behind what is happening is like horribly intelligent and like theological. I don't know if like the end justifies the means, but it's definitely like exploitation with ideas, I guess.
I think that's why people are taken against it so much, as they see exploitation with no ideas. It's really easy to dismiss it. But this is like someone clever and talented has made this really, really, really awful film.
Because he didn't
awful in the experience, or just not in the construction of
this quality.
Is it appropriate? Is it appropriate to take these themes and make a horror film out of it? Would it not be more appropriate to take these themes and make a drama, a thriller? Sometimes
the least appropriate film responses to things are sort of polite dramas about awful, impolite things. So horror's as good a place as any to do that, I always think. There's no rules about that. You can make a comedy out of something awful. It's just a question of expressing things that are really difficult to express politely. So, I guess you can do whatever you like with it. And as I say, I think this does fall on the side of the good guys. I think this is like an honourable attempt to grapple with these really deep, dark, horrible things.
I mean, he calls it a melodrama. The director, Laugier, he calls it a melodrama. He says he wasn't intending to discuss the audience. He was, he says that critics described the film as butchery, and he says that saddens him because he sees it as like a film about melancholy, and he sees it as a melodrama.
Melancholy?
Yeah.
That's some melancholy, isn't it? I mean,
yeah. I know.
But I mean, I guess he must have expected something like that with the amount of gore and violence in there. He can't really be surprised that someone might turn around and say, hang on, there's a lot of this going on in here. I think your message is getting a bit lost.
And also, he says that he didn't enjoy making the film. He's like, everything from writing the script to the editing. He says for different reasons he found it really difficult. And
the actor said it was horrible to be made to make as well. So just everyone involved agrees this is really a really truly horrible thing.
You know what? We should remake it in America and just
They did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, but I'm glad this one wasn't. I'm glad this one wasn't made in the Hollywood system, because otherwise it would have been sequelized to buggery. We would have seen a prequel detailing that little family with Xavier Dolan.
Yeah.
Then there'd be a side film with the SWAT team, and then would see how the girl with the staples on her head got there.
Yeah.
It would just, when will it end?
Yeah,
and that's when it would become exploitative, because there's only so many times you can explore the theme of trauma before you start treading the same old tropes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Pascal Lauyer's other films aren't very good and are quite horrible, if my recollection serves.
Usually I ask in these episodes if you're going to watch the film again. Matt?
No, I'm good. The fourth time was the treat. And I do recommend that people listen to it, watch it. It is worth one watch of any horror fan's time. It's just there's a lot of pain to unpack, and it'd be incredibly triggering for pretty much almost anyone watching it. So,
Josh,
I feel sick just talking about it now. I feel sick thinking about it. Like I have a really physical response to this film.
I could probably watch it again after a while, to the point where I would need to leave a lot of time, so maybe I would forget bits, because putting aside all the violence and the trauma, just the twists, it's a one-time film. Like Blair Witch, I can't watch Blair Witch again because I know all the bits. So I would need to forget and then watch it and be pleasantly surprised at the bits that I forgot.
Which is basically what I did, but I still feel horrific after it.
The bits are so powerful, they kind of stay, because I watched it once and I can remember it quite vividly.
They really do, don't they? It's really scarring.
I actually had to fast forward the last half an hour.
It's almost traumatic.
I was just, I can't sit through that again. I have to fast forward this bit. I know there's nothing, no dialogue.
Were you fast forwarding?
Yeah, I couldn't do it again. It's too much.
Well, I'm sure Pascal would love to hear that.
Watch Martyrs and fast forward. It'll be fine.
It would be turned into a nasty Benny Hill.
There's no movement there. They're just sitting there hitting each other. So
that was Martyrs, directed by Pascal Laugier. Joshua, give us a clue as to what our next film's going to be.
Oh, it's a comedy. It's going to be a funny one.
Subscribe on Apple Podcast, Spotify and Acast so you don't miss that episode. Joshua.
We're also on Twitter @TornStubsPod. Have you seen Martyrs? Will you watch it a second time or a third time or indeed a fourth time? Let us know.
Matt, how can people find you? Online, not stalking you.
Just don't turn up on my door with a shotgun. You can find me online at Twitter @mattglasby.com. You can find me at mattglasby.com, or most likely your best bet is to follow The Book of Horror at The Book of Horror on Twitter.
And that book, The Book of Horror, The Anatomy of Fear, is in all good and dodgy bookstores. It's great. We should mention the illustrations by Barney Bodoano.
Barney Bodoano, beautiful black and white illustrations for each of the main films.
Yeah, they are really good. They're like kind of, they look like pencils mixed with watercolours.
Yeah, I think it's charcoal, but yeah, he's really, really talented.
Charcoal, really effective. It reminds me of Eddie Campbell, who drew From Hell.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, he'd love to hear that.
Yeah, they're very cool, very creepy.
Yeah, I think they do give it a bit of like, make the book itself a little bit scary, hopefully.
We are off to find true transcendence. Until next time, I remain Robert Gershenson.
I'm Joshua Winning.
And I'm Matt Glasby. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Matt.
Cut!